The Northern Beaches contain many of Sydney's nicest beaches, largest shopping centres, and is home to nearly 250,000 people. But there's one thing that residents and visitors both agree on: getting around is a nightmare. There are only 3 roads in and out of the region due to the need to cross Middle Harbour, and none of them are especially good. The southernmost and most direct crossing is the chronically congested Military Road, which includes the Spit Bridge, one of the few remaining active bascule bridges in the state. There is a reasonable amount of bus priority, bus lanes, queue jumps, and traffic light priority, along this corridor, but it is very narrow in places, and traffic often slows to a crawl through Mossman. The middle crossing is via Warringah Road and the Roseville Bridge. This corridor can support more traffic and has seen extensive grade separating upgrades, particularly around the Northern Beaches Hospital. The problem with this corridor is that it runs east-west and feeds into the Pacific Highway or Eastern Valley Way, both very busy corridors in their own right. Limited buses run along Warringah Road towards the city, but plenty run to Chatswood Station. The northernmost crossing is via Mona Vale Road through St Ives. This is the least useful corridor as it forces a very circuitous route, and like Warringah Road, it feeds onto other very busy roads. Some buses run along Mona Vale Road to Gordon Station. Notably, none of these roads are motorways, nor are they anything close to that. Internally, the main transport spine is the Pittwater Road corridor, stretching along the coast from Manly to Mona Vale. The frequent 199 bus route runs along the entire corridor. The Northern Beaches also does not have any rail transport, only buses and a single wharf at Manly. There's been lots of discussion about the feasibility of a metro or train line along the Pittwater Road corridor. A metro line could replace the B1 in whole or in part between the city and Mona Vale, and could certainly provide a very high capacity, higher order transport option, and could allow the rationalisation, or simplification, of the many bus routes to the city. It could also serve Mossman, Cremorne and Neutral Bay, removing congestion from Military Road. There are, however, numerous problems with the Northern Beaches metro line. The need to dive under Middle Harbour would necessitate very deep stations in Mossman and Balgowlah, and the extra cost of these deep stations might result in them being de-scoped from a potential project. Another barrier is the need to significantly upzone around stations in order to justify constructing them socially and economically, historically frowned upon in the so-called Insular Peninsula. This was brought up very early in the recent public forum on Northern Beaches public transport.
There's another question I'm always asked, and I'm sure we'll be asked again tonight, and someone might go into more detail, why aren't we pushing for a metro? That's an interesting one, but I just want you to know, a metro is fine, a metro station, but you're looking at 25,000 dwellings per station. Now there are 330 dwellings at...
Finally, there are questions around how a metro would be integrated into the broader network. Personally, I see 3 possible options. First, a branch from the M1 at Victoria Cross. This is the most common suggestion, but it has a few engineering challenges. Tying the branch into an existing line would be very disruptive, and the need to electrify with the low-voltage DC system would necessitate a large number of traction substations, raising the project's cost. It would introduce capacity constraints. If both branches operated at 15 trains an hour on peak, there would be no spare capacity, as the current moving block signalling system has a maximum throughput of 30 trains per hour. This is a concern, as most M1 trains on peak are full and standing already. If this arrangement was pursued, the Northern Beaches branch would therefore need to operate at a lower frequency. Additionally, building the line as a branch would necessitate expanding the contract with the existing operators of the M1, and would force rolling stock and signalling to come from Alstom, eliminating the possibility of a competitive tender process, which is the norm for other transport projects. Second, a whole new line from Victoria Cross. This would allow a competitive tender process and avoid the traction power problems, but presents additional engineering challenges and exacerbates the capacity issue to some extent. The best layout for an expanded Victoria Cross, in my unqualified opinion, would include an expensive and challenging second mined cavern under either Denison or Walker Streets.
The up-northwest line would be rerouted to the easternmost platform of the new cavern, with the two inner platforms being used for the Northern Beaches line, with a turnback to the south, and stub tunnels to future-proof a southern extension. This Victoria Line-esque platform rearrangement would allow cross-platform interchanges travelling to or from the city, making the journey as easy as possible. This arrangement would almost certainly have to include increased frequency, possibly 30 trains per hour, between at least Chatswood and Sydenham to dissipate the extra load at Victoria Cross, which would require additional rolling stock to be purchased for the M1.
Third, an entirely new line, but one starting in the city. With the opening of the Western Harbour Tunnel in 2028, there is scope to rearrange traffic flows over the Harbour Bridge, which could possibly see the closure of the current Cahill Expressway lane and southbound bus lane, which could be moved across a lane. This would allow metro trains to operate on the reservation John Bradfield created for a Northern Beaches line, way back when the bridge was built. This design would allow the reuse of much infrastructure, lowering costs. Platforms 1 and 2 at Wynyard could be rebuilt, the false wall between them and platforms 3 and 4 could be demolished too, that would be cool, and the tunnels up to the former bridge tramway repurposed for metro operations. The Northern Toll Plaza could be reverted back to a Milsons Point metro station, and a flyover could be built similar to the one trams took before it was demolished to make way for a Warringah freeway. Options through North Sydney are a bit more challenging. 2 of the 4 platforms were originally intended to serve the Northern Beaches, with stub tunnels provided west of the station. A metro takeover of platforms 2 and 3 would allow cross-platform interchanges as at Chatswood. These stub tunnels could potentially be reused, otherwise a dive site could be built south of Waverton. Alongside this, the space formerly occupied by the St Leonard's goods yard could be used to stable trains overnight, making up for the loss of the number 2 and 3 tunnel roads at North Sydney. If large enough, this new yard could allow the closure of the Lavender Bay sidings too. Platforms 1 at 4 would then be constructed at St Leonard's to make up for the loss of turnback facilities at North Sydney. The metro line would then follow a normal alignment after North Sydney. The aforementioned geographical isolation leads to a socially insular mindset amongst the region's residents, which is why it is so often described as the Insular Peninsula. Certainly, historically, some residents worried that better public transport would, in crude terms, grant poor people easier access to their wealthy suburbs. Whilst this attitude has broadly dissipated, it has left a strong NIMBY legacy, even though parts of the Northern Beaches, particularly around Pittwater Road, are very heavily developed, meaning the housing increase that would justify a metro puts residents off the idea. It would be political suicide to build a metro here for that reason alone. By the way, in researching this video, I decided to spend the better part of a day travelling around the Northern Beaches on public transport. You'll see plenty of B-roll from these trips, and I'll make quite a few references to them. In my view, the easiest way to improve transport in the Northern Beaches is to take advantage of private transport's biggest weakness: water. There isn't much scope to increase the number of routes or wharves, but there is definitely scope to increase the quality and frequency of service on the existing routes. As it stands, there are 4 different services from Manly Wharf: Emerald F1, using smaller, more frequent and faster ferries; Freshwater F1, using larger, less frequent, slower ferries; Manly Fast Ferry; and Captain Cook Watson's Bay and Manly, which adds a stop at Watson's Bay. Both F1 services and the Fast Ferry are treated as identical services by the Opal ticketing system, with passengers being charged the same fare and given the same benefits, like contributions to the fare cap, something made very clear by the announcements on the Fast Ferry.
Did you know we are now part of the Opal network? This means you travel with us for the same price as the F1 service.
The Captain Cook service charges its own $7 fare with Opal Pay, where you can use value on your Opal card to pay for private services like a bank card, which does not give any travel benefits. The Emerald and Fast Ferry services take roughly 20 minutes, the freshwater ferries take 30, and the 5 to 6 daily Captain Cook ferries take about the same. In terms of frequency, Emerald F1 services run between 3 and 4 times an hour, Freshwater's hourly, and Fast Ferries 3 times an hour. The Captain Cook service is so infrequent, I won't consider it from here on. The easiest way I see to increase the level and quality of service is to bring the fast ferries under direct government control when their contract expires. There is no longer a distinguishing factor between them and most F1 ferries, now that journey time and fares are identical. Unifying operations would allow easier use by unfamiliar passengers who may not understand the difference that currently exists, and would increase usability by only having one timetable. It would also create other quality of life benefits like live tracking and delay reporting for all services. Under this arrangement, ferries with a 20-minute journey time could depart between 6 and 8 times an hour, with these departures properly spaced to minimise wait time. Currently, there is no timetable coordination between Sydney ferries and Manly Fast Ferry, leading to cases where two ferries leave at roughly the same time, exacerbating wait times. This was very evident on my ferry journey. The F1 service I was planning on catching was full, but the fast ferry had space remaining. Both ferries had such a similar timetable that they left Circular Quay at the same time, literally slipstreamed behind each other all the way to Manly, and arrived at quite literally the exact same time. Excusing the dirty window, this allowed me to grab a really cool tracking shot arriving at Manly, but demonstrates the flaw with the two independent operations. Ferries have the potential to move enormous numbers of people. An Emerald ferry can comfortably carry 250 people with a crush capacity of 400. A bus at crush capacity can only take 60 people, and they take a very direct route between Manly and the city. So in this respect, ferries can act as a train-like service to move large numbers of people. I don't propose changing the freshwater timetable. For the 15,000 people who live within 800 metres of Manly Wharf, this allows an unspeakably easy journey to the city, but obviously we must consider transport from Manly to the rest of the northern beaches. This is where I see the necessity of more beeline style routes. Upgrading existing routes would provide material benefits like better running times through better bus priority, as well as passenger quality of life benefits like nicer shelters, better branding, identification, and wayfinding. The B1 stops not only have tram-style passenger information displays for B1 and other services, they also have poster-style digital screens providing additional information about other services in the area. B2 could run from Manly to Palm Beach with bus priority throughout, allowing a slightly faster and more pleasant journey than the current 199, and allowing the rationalisation of other nearby routes. B1 stops and priority could be reused between Warringah Mall and Mona Vale. The buses currently used on the 199 could be repurposed to increase capacity on feeder routes to both the B1 and B2. The current 199 bus stop at Manly is well placed, but West Esplanade could do with being bus-only westbound. In my experience, the 199, when not stuck in traffic, is a reasonably effective route, but it has relatively little priority, leading to late running in traffic. Full-time bus lanes would provide a huge benefit to a potential B2 in this regard. The 199 is part of the all-day frequent network, so frequencies are every 10 minutes or better during daytime all week. But even then, buses can get very busy. Although it doesn't connect to ferries, the 160X, also part of the all-day frequent network, between DY and Chatswood, could also do with a brand upgrade. Transport openly admit that it was designed to be the next Beeline route.
The X160 bus is designed to be the next Beeline bus,
with good priority and wide stop spacing. Alongside some better amenities at stops, upgrading this route to the B3 would probably require better priority in and out of Chatswood, where many buses get stuck in traffic. The other route I'd change is the 144, becoming B4. This route is truly abysmal, with appallingly long running times between Manly and St Leonards and Chatswood. The solution here is complicated, as the 144 serves many key attractors, such as Royal North Shore Hospital, Crow's Nest and the Pacific Highway. However, its importance as a cross-city orbital route means it needs to have a better connection with higher order transport with much faster running times. I see two ways of doing this. Rerouting the 144 to run to North Sydney, allowing interchange with Victoria Cross Station on Miller Street, or running it to the Royal North Shore Hospital only, allowing interchange with St Leonards and Crow's Nest stations. In the first case,
Routes 114 and 119 would both run full-time all the way to Chatswood, filling in for Pacific Highway services no longer provided by the 144. In the second case, the 114 would run to Victoria Cross and North Sydney, with the 119 running full-time to Chatswood. In both cases, the overnight service 144N would be replaced by a 24-hour BN4 service. I'd also run B2 and B3 24 hours at least on Friday and Saturday nights, with their own BN2 and BN3 routes. The existing B1 route isn't immune from problems either. Once buses get past the Spit Bridge into the North Shore, the priority measures become more lacking, and combined with the increase in other routes on the same corridor, this causes much slower running. I can't think of many ways to improve this other than to ensure bus lanes extend the whole length of Military Road and are full-time, as well as ensuring green wave priority for buses, especially late ones. Extra depot space would have to be made available. Some space could probably be found in existing depots through route rationalisation. However, an entirely new depot would probably need to be constructed. This could potentially be built in the French's Forest or Brookvale industrial areas, but buying land for a depot would constitute a significant proportion of the project cost. As for what buses should be used, arguments can be made for and against double-deckers and articulated buses. The additional third door of articulated buses shortens their dwell time, which could prove very useful on very busy routes like the B2 and B4. This also eliminates the need to provide sufficient clearance on top of these routes for the extra high double-decker vehicles. B3 could use double-deckers as it has very wide stop spacing and many passengers travel the full length of the route, so the shortened dwell time is less useful here, and the extra seats from the upper deck would allow more passengers to travel in comfort. As these buses would be purchased new, they would also be electric. This is dictated by current government policy, allowing the investigation into new innovations such as 3-door double-deckers and 4-door articulated buses, as the backs of buses need not rise above an engine. Thought should be given to the provision of bicycle storage, particularly on the B2 and B3. This could be accommodated through onboard or external racks. Loading bicycles would increase dwell somewhat, but it would allow people to take their bicycles with them, not currently possible on any Northern Beaches transport other than private transport and ferries. This leads me to discussing active transport. Around Manly, there are several shared paths which cater to the many active transport users in the area. It feels as though every kid and their dog is rolling around on a fat bike. Despite their often unique interpretation of helmet laws, these riders are in fact helping alleviate traffic, and as many riders are children without driver licenses, their bikes afford an otherwise unavailable level of freedom. Cycling is clearly a very popular way of travelling in the lower Northern Beaches, with extensive bike parking available at Manly Wharf. I feel this could be consolidated into a Dutch-style cycle parking building, which would have the added benefit of weather protection, but it's so much better than nothing. Outside this region, however, the infrastructure drops off in quality. The shared paths that do exist are often poor in quality and force a circuitous route to be taken. As such, better links to the existing and new B-line stops should be considered, with new stops having weather-protected bike sheds where space permits. This could benefit the Seaforth, Balgowlah and French's Forest areas considerably. Northern Beaches Council does have an active transport strategy, but unfortunately, as with most council cycling plans, it is severely lacking in substance. Finally, there is one more thing to consider regarding travelling to the city from the Northern Beaches, leaving Circular Quay. For many travellers, their destination may not lie within walking distance of the wharves, requiring a change to reach it. Although this obviously adds time to the journey, due to the ferry's direct route, these journeys can still be faster than peak hour traffic, buses included. The main barrier to these journeys are the additional peak hour cost. An adult will pay an additional $1.20 on a bus or tram, or $2.20 on a train in peak. I think these final journeys should be free. Some will argue that this would push patronage to unsustainable levels, but there's an additional layer of nuance at play here. Passengers travelling from Circular Quay to other parts of the city travel southbound in the morning and northbound in the afternoon, in contrast to many other bus or tram passengers who travel the opposite directions. This means that the many peak hour buses and trams finishing their inbound trips leave the city, often Circular Quay, at high frequencies but virtually empty, so there's more than enough capacity for ferry passengers on their so-called contraflow trips. This benefit should be rolled out to all ferry passengers at Circular Quay, possibly also Barangaroo as well. Thanks for watching this video. I hope I've raised some points you might not have otherwise considered, and I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, thanks to my channel members for their ongoing support.